Coming up on tonight's UAP News Show.
From Grusch to the Grassy Knoll, Congress digs into UFOs and JFK.
Dr. Phil meets disclosure, UFOs go mainstream.
New faces, new phase. UAPDF revamps its roster.
And Weaponized, a week that moved the needle.
Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we are back at it again for another episode of UAP Society's weekly UAP News Show. I am stoked to get started, so without further ado, Justin, say hey.
Greetings, cosmic enthusiasts. It's Justin here. Let's dive right in.
Up first, from Grusch to the Grassy Knoll, Congress digs into UFOs and JFK. Welcome back, where the strange gets stranger and the truth keeps slipping through the cracks, or maybe, just maybe, the dam is starting to break. Since our last episode, Congress has been busy. We've seen a triple whammy of closed-door briefings on UAPs, some eyebrow-raising revelations at FBI headquarters, oh yeah, a historic hearing on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is in the mix as well. Something's moving beneath the surface. The question is, are we finally closing in on the truth? Here's the breakdown. On Tuesday, May 13th, whistleblower David Grusch, Representative Eric Burleson, and reps from Aero sat down behind closed doors in a secure SCIF briefing. What was said? We don't know, but we do know it happened.
A tweet from Askapol UAP says, Scoop, Burleson, Grusch, and Aero sat down yesterday. Let's take a listen to this Askapol exclusive with Eric Burleson and Matt Laszlo talking about how that went.
Right?
Do you know why there was no hearing this week?
Open hearing? I don't. There's not a lot of communication, I believe, happening between the oversight. We're not understanding. I have not heard why we're not having the open hearing. I had a hearing with Aero yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
I had a briefing with Aero for
just you and them?
A briefing with Aero, and David Grusch was with me.
Oh, interesting. And just you.
And David gave them more information, I think, than they gave us.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So, at least new information.
Yeah.
So, that was a very productive meeting. Unfortunately, the irony is, one of the reasons why we postponed the previous hearing in the SCIF with Lou Elizondo and the others was that we were trying to get David Grusch there.
Yeah. He
still doesn't have his clearance, and he has other issues that are pressing for him that he has to get back home.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate. But on Thursday, we're going to have that hearing. I don't know who all is going to be in it. Apparently Lou is not because of all this kerfuffle. But then we have a briefing with the FBI in the afternoon. So this is UAP week.
But not with Aero? Not with Aero Thursday?
No. I mean, I had the private briefing yesterday.
And it was just you, them,
and David Grusch.
And Grusch.
Yeah.
So what?
And other people from the intelligence, different arms of the intelligence community.
Yeah. So what's Thursday's briefing with the FBI? Is that going to be more incursions?
Yeah, I mean, David Grusch encouraged the oversight committee to set this up, so he's going to be giving me the topic and the content and where to go.
And he'll be there for it?
He won't be able to make it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Then on Thursday, May 15th, they had not one, but two very important meetings. In the morning, they had a SCIF briefing, this time with the full UAP caucus and secrets task force. On the roster, none other than astrophysicist Eric Davis, a name long tied to wild claims about recovered craft and non-human intelligence. Askapol UAP says, SCIF briefing wrap-up. Members in attendance, Anna Paulina Luna, Andy Ogles, and Eric Burleson. Confirmed briefer was none other than Eric Davis. But it didn't stop there. Later that same day, members of Congress headed to FBI headquarters, where, according to insiders, they were shown a never-before-seen UAP video that even the Department of Defense's own UAP office hasn't seen. Let that sink in.
Oh. Askapol UAP says, news. Incoming UAP caucus says they've got the goods at FBI headquarters, including viewing a new video even Aero's never seen. And then in another tweet, they say, news. The FBI, which UAP caucus says has new UAP videos, is muscling in on Aero's funding. Quote, different people on UAP's team have actually seen objects, end quote. Representative Burleson reports after FBI headquarters meeting.
In this next clip from Angry Astronaut, We'll get a look at newly released footage from the Pentagon that they can't explain and hear his perspective of the event.
Now, the first part of this footage is not particularly exciting because the sensor has yet to pick anything up, but let me go ahead and review what this footage actually is. Quote, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office received a report from a U.S. military service consisting of 8 minutes and 15 seconds of video footage from an infrared sensor aboard a U.S. military platform. The recording, captured in the Middle East in 2023, depicts an apparent thermal contrast within the sensor's field of view. The area of apparent contrast, boy, they're being really careful with their wording here, exhibited characteristics that may be consistent with the presence of a physical object. However, due to the absence of corroborating telemetry or multimodal sensor data, AARO cannot determine whether the observed signature represents a sensor artifact or a thermal emission or reflection from a physical source. The available data does not support a conclusive analytic evaluation, but there it goes. Now, in my opinion, this footage was taken either from some sort of reconnaissance drone or reconnaissance balloon with the U.S. military, and they were able to track the object. The object clearly got the attention of the drone operator, or perhaps an automated system that operates the drone, but really this kind of looks like the decision of a human operator to track this object, whatever it is, and it must be an unusual thing given the fact that the drone operator is paying so much attention to it. So it continues to soar over the landscape, not too dissimilar from other UAP footage that has been taken in the past, but you're going to see this thing carrying out some pretty interesting maneuvers as the tracking goes on. This is not consistent speed. This is not a consistent trajectory. This is this thing flying all over the damn place and abruptly changing its course. Now, for the sake of comparison, let's have a look at the Mount Etna footage in the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can see this object following a very consistent speed that is fairly easy to track, as opposed to the other object that, again, it continues to zip about the screen chaotically. Now, in both cases, presumably, we have experienced drone operators who are accustomed to following things in the atmosphere, and yet this object is very, very difficult for the drone operator to follow simply because it is moving in such an erratic and constantly changing manner, with its trajectory and its speed varying left and right. Now, as time goes on, the operator does a better job of locking in on the object, thermal trace, whatever you want to call it, and eventually getting a good picture of what it looks like a little bit more close up. But nevertheless, as we watch this thing maneuver, this doesn't look like a thermal trace or a reflection. Look at that. Look at how quickly this thing changes course. I mean, my God, I can't begin to imagine the G-forces that would be involved in such a sudden change of direction or change of speed. I mean, so radical that it was a bit difficult for the drone operator or thermal reconnaissance sensor to keep track of it. Now, at this point, it appears to be following it a little bit more closely, seems to be tracking or homing in on it, locking in on its movement. Again, is that because we're getting a better track on it, or is it because the object isn't changing speed and trajectory anymore? Kind of hard to say. Now, at this point, once they start getting a better lock on it, they can start zooming in on it a bit more. Again, looking very much like many of the other thermal orb type UAPs that we have seen in non-military footage. Let me go ahead, for sake of comparison, comparison and bring up the work of the Tedesco brothers. And by the way, this footage is courtesy of the Backyard Professor. This guy does really, really good content. Make sure to check up his channel. And by the way, he happens to be a fan of my channel. But this orb moving across the sky, again, this is a thermal image in the same way as this military object is. Again, there you can see an aircraft, very clearly an aircraft that they are tracking, and that's quite good actually, because it compares and contrasts quite well with this thermal image, this orb that's moving about and then sometimes becoming stationary before it changes direction. Again, very similar to the Arrow footage, although I have to say, I think the Arrow orb has been moving a little bit more radically, at least in some of the footage, than the stuff that the Tedesco brothers filmed. So for the rest of the footage, the sensor finally has locked on to this object, and it doesn't seem to be changing its trajectory anymore, but instead following a solid and consistent course. But once again, given the movement that this object demonstrated at the beginning of the footage, and also given the fact that it gives off a very clear thermal trace, and by the way, no visible form of propulsion, no exhaust, no burst of gas, no energy whatsoever involved in its maneuvers, well, I think this definitely qualifies as a genuine UFO.
Yeah, that video is pretty interesting to me, to be honest, especially since he put the comparison of what an actual airplane looks like in the infrared up in the corner. You can clearly see the difference on an airliner or a real aircraft. They're required to have lights on, strobe lights, beacon lights, navigation lights. And you can see that in the infrared video. You can see the strobe lights pulsing, because when they pulse, they get really hot. So you definitely see that. And you don't see any sort of indication of any sort of lights blinking or anything on these objects.
Right.
And furthermore, they just look like an orb.
Well, shout out to Tedesco brothers, shout out to the Angry Astronaut, and shout out to the Backyard Professor, because all three of those people were involved in that clip that we just saw.
Right.
I feel the need to explain one particular thing, just because, like, I know, for example, if my parents watch this, they're going to be confused about what all those black boxes were on the screen. And basically that's just Arrow covering up all the metadata or the data that was on there, so that, like, you can't identify when it was taken or where or by who or at what angle or elevation or whatever.
Right.
It's just basically like hiding the data. Like, they're letting you see the orb, but they're not letting you know, like, the who.
Well, it's probably because the video was collected on a classified
that's what I mean.
Sensor system.
They're not trying to let you see anything that would allow you to somehow trace it back or identify it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so there was that. And then also, I, like you, also really appreciated the comparison to the orb that we were seeing in that video.
Yeah.
And he showed the one that was in the Mount Etna situation, because that just recently came up when we did our interview with Chris James. If you want to see the interview with Chris James, that's coming out on my channel soon. Stay tuned. And he also, like you just said, showed the Tedesco brothers, shout out to Tedesco brothers, their footage as well. If you guys don't know who they are, Ross Coldhart is always showing what they got going on. They're like these two brothers off of Long Island. They're studying UFOs, UAPs. They have their own van that's stoked out, kind of like fucking
they have cameras and sensor systems.
Yeah, they have a
into
whole
this van,
entire setup. Yeah. So, like, they're doing a lot of really important work right now.
Very interesting, in my opinion.
Any other things specifically about the video that you wanted to mention?
I mean, okay, so I just want to bring up that it is possible that the beginning of the video, the reason for the object moving so erratically, it's possible that it could just be the operator moving a little joystick trying to follow the object.
I can see that.
And because he's not 100% at the same speed that the object's moving at, with his little joystick, it's moving all around.
I'm picturing me trying to play a game like Call of Duty, and it's like, I'm like, womp on this wall, womp on that wall, womp staring at the ceiling, womp staring at the floor. I can't do the double joystick thing.
So that's a good analogy.
I can relate to what you're saying with. Don't ask me to play a double joystick game, because I will die.
Because in my mind, if the object was truly bouncing all over the place, once the tracking system locked on to this object, it would have had a harder time keeping track of it as well.
So something that you thought that you are making me think of that I brought up just a second ago that I want to mention is Another theory I would like to lend to the situation that I thought of is like, it seemed like in the beginning there where it was zipping all over the place, it almost seemed like it was intelligent enough to realize that something was trying to lock in on it. And every time it like was about to or stay on it long enough to get the lock, it was like, zoop, nope, I'm over here now. Zoop, nope, I'm over here now. Haha, now I'm over here.
Yeah,
it seemed like it was like almost like a haha, you can't catch me kind of thing. But then at the end, like it just allowed it to happen. So I don't know if that theory really holds water.
Okay.
But I just want to throw it out there.
Okay. I mean, there was one or two times that it looked like that was the case.
Right.
It really looked like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because as soon as the little pink thing got on it, it was like over here.
Yeah. And you know, will we ever know? Probably not.
No. I mean, unless we speak to the operators of that craft.
It would be. Yeah. Right. What else are they saying?
I know.
You know.
Okay, so that's the video. We have to also comment on the fact that like we're talking about this video because Congress has been super busy last week. Last week. So we have the thing with Burleson and Grusch and Arrow that happened on Tuesday. Then 2 days later, they had two more meetings. One was a SCIF briefing with the UAP caucus and the Secrets Task Force. Then the next meeting they had that same exact day was Anna Paulina Luna, Andy Ogles, and Eric Burleson over at the FBI headquarters. So there was a lot going on, you know, throughout the Monday through Friday work week. So I would like to read a tweet from Mike Disclosure that basically summarizes what went down on Thursday and also shares his perspectives to these events and what they mean. So on Twitter, Mike Disclosure says, breaking, Eric Burleson attended two classified meetings today, one with Arrow and one with the FBI. What he learned raises serious questions about the entire UAP cover-up. Here's what Rep. Eric Burleson told Matt Laszlo from Askapol about the events of the day. In the morning for the Arrow briefing, Burleson came armed with questions from whistleblower David Grusch. He found out something explosive. The White House oversees special access programs, or SAPs, that do not report to Congress. That's a direct breach of oversight. Arrow admitted they have no UAP craft, no bodies, no hard evidence. Despite the hearings, testimony, and reports, they're still flying blind. Then as far as the afternoon FBI briefing, this meeting was classified and far more revealing. The FBI has a covert UAP working group led by a national program manager with over a dozen personnel across the U.S. What they showed members of Congress was surprising. They showed videos not shown by Arrow, never before seen footage of UAPs from FBI sources, and Rep. Eric Burleson commented, quote, the FBI is more professional and better resourced to investigate this, end quote. Is that throwing shade at Arrow or what?
Yeah,
I think it is. Wait, I'm not done. Okay, but here's the twist. The FBI asked a bold question in the meeting. Can Congress give us more direct authority for UAP investigations? This is because Arrow has a budget and the FBI does not to look into this topic, which is why their UAP working group only has slightly over a dozen agents that are investigating this across all 50 states. They need Congress to give them a budget and direct authority to investigate UAPs. Despite better data, the FBI also admitted they too have no hard evidence of craft or bodies. So what does this mean? It means the deepest truth, if they exist, are outside the reach of both Arrow and the FBI. They're buried in SAPs that may be run directly from the executive branch. And if that's true, then the entire UAP cover-up ends at the White House. And disclosure to Congress or the public, it may never happen unless laws change. The walls of secrecy is real, Congress is being strategically blocked, and the public is being strategically misled.
Wow.
Done. Like, that was just a lot, right?
So that's crazy to think that the whole UAP cover-up is stemming from the White House. Yeah, so does that mean that with Donald Trump in office, is he going to actually be the disclosure president?
That's what Danny Sheehan's saying.
Right, and I do believe Eric Burleson is asking him to disclose by an executive order.
Well, you know what? I mean, I feel like there are enough people hitting their heads against the wall now that they're really starting to get like pissed about it. And the more doors that they walk into, the more telling it is that there's something behind those doors because there's like so many of them, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, oh, man.
Yeah, you know, that makes sense that the FBI would be able to investigate UAP better than Arrow would, because
I think it's so funny that
Arrow,
the FBI is like, okay, forget paying Arrow, just pay us.
right? That is pretty funny.
Like, don't even bother giving them your money or your time. Just hand it over this way. We'll get you some better results.
Well, I mean, okay, so just to make the point, I mean, Arrow is basically the Department of Defense is investigating itself, the Department of Defense. and they are controlled on what they can say and what they can do. Whereas the FBI is not under the control of the Department of Defense. They're separate. So they would be,
better suited. Yeah.
Or more able to really take a hard look at this topic, and possibly really disclose.
Well, if anybody's going to come in here and shake shit up and move shit around and put chess pieces on different parts of the board you didn't even know were there till 2025, it's Trump.
Right.
Like, it's him.
Right.
He is definitely I have so many thoughts running through my head I don't want to say out loud. He likes to keep us on our toes. Wow, that was
okay.
That was very tame. Okay, and just when you thought the week couldn't get any wilder, on Thursday, May 20th, 2025, Congress held a hearing on the JFK assassination. The event was live streamed online, and thousands of people were watching.
The next day, Representative Anna Paulina Luna tweeted, "Based on new evidence presented during yesterday's JFK hearing, it is becoming increasingly clear that elements within our own government have been blocking the release of truth pertaining to the assassination of President Kennedy." Wow. All right. So for the past 62 years, the CIA has actively and continuously obstructed the investigation of the assassination of President JFK with no consequences. Mr. Hardway, former Select Committee on Assassinations.
Let's take a look at that clip and hear it from him next.
For the past 62 years, the Central Intelligence Agency has actively and continuously obstructed the investigation of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy with no consequences for their actions. 10 years ago, the CIA's official historian admitted that the CIA had hid information from the Warren Commission during its investigation. The CIA stonewalled the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, the Church Committee. The CIA was not forthcoming with the Rockefeller Commission. The CIA misled and slow-walked the Assassination Records Review Board. James Angleton's preferred method in dealing with the Warren Commission was to, quote, wait them out. The first CIA officer I ever interviewed looked at me and said, "You represent Congress. What the F is that to the CIA? You'll be gone in 2 years, and we'll still be here." In 1978, the CIA ran an illegal domestic covert operation involving an undercover officer to subvert and obstruct the House Select Committee on Assassinations. That officer served undercover. That terminology is the terminology the CIA used to describe his assignment working with the Select Committee in a statement that their representative made under penalties of perjury in a lawsuit in 2005.
Okay, so I don't think he was shy about saying he thought the CIA was involved in this entire thing, right?
Of course they were.
He said CIA about 30 times in that one little clip.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me to think or understand that the CIA basically is just doing what it wants, and it's like they don't want to tell the people that are in charge of controlling them or in charge of them, in charge of writing the laws that they have to follow. They don't want those people to know exactly what's going on, because then they're just going to write laws that prevent them from doing that.
Right. It's the whole, like, you're a temporary employee, you're only here for 4 years kind of thing. So you don't deserve to be in the full know because you're not going to stick around long enough for it to matter.
Right. But that means that our elected representatives are not actually in control. And that's a major problem, You just made the point of that whole scenario.
I happened to catch that event live, and I watched the live stream as it was happening. And I mean, I was glad that we're having these kinds of hearings. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most was like the age of two of the guys that were up there testifying, Mr. Bolden and Mr. The dentist that examined JFK's body. I'm going to have to go back and look at his name, but that's okay. Basically, like, I was just taken aback by the fact that, like, these guys are up there in age, and it's good that we're hearing their side of the story while they're still here to tell their side of the story. You know, it would really suck if like we did this in like, let's say 5 years from now or however long from now, and those guys are no longer around to share their testimony with us in these kinds of hearings. So I was just really glad that like people are not letting this go. You know, like it's a major issue if aspects of the government can off a president and then get away with it. And then like the whole thing with how they do or conduct their secrecy is completely, in my opinion, tied to the same way they handle UAP and UFO secrecy. I feel like the UAP secrecy and JFK's assassination are somehow intertwined. I'm still stuck on that. But yeah. Another thing that really stood out to me about those hearings is Mr. Bolden and how he was a secret agent or a special agent, and he noticed that there was like more bullets that were in the car than what they were saying. Like in other words, he was talking about evidence that was found in the car that was going against the main narrative that they were saying to everybody. Like he was like, oh, but there's 4 bullets here. And they were like, oh, but there only 3 have. Like, anyways, so they basically kidnapped this man, drug this man like with drugs. They drugged him up, and then they threatened him and basically like told him, if you don't stop talking and play on our side, you're gonna. You know what I mean? Like, so, and this is a secret, like a special agent.
Well,
so,
I
like,
mean, if they can, if it is true that the CIA
they're taking out agents, they're taking out presidents.
JFK,
like,
then
who's safe? Nobody's safe.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's what the point is.
My gosh, that's just. But I have never like seen Mr. Bolden before, and just to hear how, you know, like, he was so still stuck on that story. Like, I cannot imagine how traumatizing that was for him to be working for the government, for his country, serving his time, doing what he feels is correct, you know, integrity, telling the truth, all that shit, just for him to be kidnapped and drugged and told that, like, if you keep talking about this, you're not going to be around to say a word. Like, that.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. So again, I was really glad that these guys, that they held these hearings now, and that these guys got their stuff on the record while they're still here to tell their story. And yeah, that's that. So again, I need to go back to the main point of this whole story is that Congress was busy. They did a lot of things. Okay. We had a lot of meetings. I'm not going to get into the drama of how things said they were going to happen when they were supposed to, and then did it, and all the blah, 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 blah in between that. I'm just going to focus on what did happen. Cool?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. So looking at everything that Congress has accomplished, could this be a historic turning point in the UAP disclosure timeline? Is there a connection between the cover-ups around JFK's assassination and the government secrecy on UFOs? You guys already know my opinion on that.
Yeah.
At one point, does the secrecy become unsustainable? And what do you think happens when it finally breaks? Let us know in the comment section below. And also, I feel the need to say I want you guys to stick around to the very, very end, because I have a very special treat to show you. It's a special clip.
Okay.
Yes.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, Dr. Phil meets disclosure. UFOs go mainstream. Okay, this next story is something that totally caught us by surprise. Dr. Phil, yes, the Dr. Phil just hosted Lou Elizondo and Bryce Sable to talk about UAPs, government secrecy, and national security. Let that sink in for a second. One of the most mainstream trusted figures in American media just put the UFO subject front and center for his massive daytime audience. Right, and he's literally going to do that.
Don't tell the end before you finish the intro.
Okay. All right. And here's the kicker. He didn't laugh. He leaned in. He asked questions. He treated it seriously, which begs the question, are we crossing a tipping point in public perception? Is this the moment where disclosure goes full mainstream?
I gotta admit, having UFOs being spoken about with Lou Elizondo and Bryce Sable on Dr. Phil's show was not on my 2025 bingo card. This came out of left field, and I was not prepared, but I am here for it.
Right. Me too.
And when I think of Dr. Phil and his show and what he does, this is what I think of.
That's what I always do, and they never catch me. Ain't nobody gonna catch me.
Because you're too streetwise?
Yup. And all these hoes laughing like something funny.
She's talking about the audience, that they're laughing at her.
Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep.
So the audience are a bunch of hoes?
Yep. Catch me outside, how about that?
Huh?
Catch me outside, how about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
Catch her outside, and she'll go outside and do what she has to do.
And so, yeah, Dr. Phil has just entered the UFO chat, you guys. We've heard him talk about family drama, addiction, out-of-control teenagers, but UFOs, that's new.
Yes. In this next clip, we focus on Dr. Phil's own surprising take on the UAP phenomena. For a man known for cutting through denial and deception, his comments on transparency, national security, and government secrecy hit different. If you've ever wondered what it would sound like to hear Dr. Phil question the narrative, now's your chance.
Welcome back to Dr. Phil Podcast. Very interesting today. Some of you are going to be intrigued because you're just interested. Some of you are going to be intrigued because you are concerned. I'm talking to former senior intelligence official and whistleblower, Louis Elizondo, and award-winning writer, producer, and journalist Bryce Zabel, who exposed the secrets hidden in government reports about unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, also known as UFOs. From the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, to legislation spearheaded by Chuck Schumer and Marco Rubio referencing non-human intelligence, they both unravel explosive claims of recovered alien technology, biological specimens, and Navy pilot videos of seemingly impossible maneuvers. Now, as drones and covert operations raise questions about national security, Elizondo and Zabel shed light on the growing transparency movement and ask the ultimate question: what does the government really know, and why isn't it telling us? Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Everybody now knows who you guys are, and I am sure leaning forward into this subject matter. You know, I used to think and comment on this as, I would say, a healthy degree of skepticism. My biggest concern was that every time I saw someone on camera talking about this, he was somebody in a dirty gimme cap. But of late, we have seen very sophisticated aviators. We have seen military pilots reporting very interesting and unexplainable phenomenon, and we have seen evidence of government reports that suggest that this isn't just somebody that has had their daily 12-pack sitting on a boat somewhere reporting things that, you know, maybe were a bit suspect. I've heard it from much more credible sources, and I have a bias because I kind of want it to be true, because I want to learn more about what's going on in the universe. And, you know, a lot of this has been discredited, of course, by the government's denial and misinformation, and a lot of it has been by non-credible claims by, you know, Bubba, who's drunk on his lawnmower and says he was abducted by aliens because his wife, he didn't come home on time, and that was his excuse. But, you know, we've heard those for a million years on the cover of some tabloid, and that makes people skeptical. But that's what I've said. In the last several years, there's been enough transparency from credible people who weren't drunk on a lawnmower, but instead were flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft with a high degree of training, like, as you say, know the difference between a MiG and a friendly aircraft at 20 miles, and have the detection capability on their panel to know what they're looking at. I had a brother-in-law that flew the 105 Thunder Chief for missile suppression, to get out on a deck and outrun a ground-to-air missile to keep it away from others. And that thing was, you know, moving at Mach 2, and that was incredible at the time. And to think of something going, you know, Mach 5, Mach 6, Mach 7 and making a hard right is just unbelievable. You know, I've flown with the Blue Angels at 7.5 Gs, and good God, you know, to think that there are machines out there that are pulling the kind of Gs you're talking about, there's no explanation for that. That's a whole different type of technology that we certainly don't have it. So it's coming from somewhere. We don't have an explanation for that.
I used to be treated like the drunk uncle at the wedding because of the stigma. You know, people would say, well, don't start talking about UFOs to Bryce. He'll talk your ear off, right? And then that doesn't seem to be happening as much anymore, because instead people come up to me and say, so you know a little bit about UFOs. Do you know what's going on? I had something happen to me. And the quote, I have something happen to me, I've heard over 100 times. And Dr. Phil, because you've actually done a show about this now, I guarantee you that 2 or 3 or half a dozen people who you know are going to probably feel like it's safe to tell you their story now. And when they do, I believe that the story they'll tell you will be highly strange. And yet, at the same time, you'll look at the people telling it to you and you'll say, these are straight shooting people. These people weren't drunk on the lawnmower, as you said. And by the way, I find that the really interesting part of the stigma. In 2006, there was a hovering craft seen by many people over Chicago O'Hare Airport. And one of the people at the airport calls the tower to turn it to say, what is this thing that we're all looking at that's hovering over it? And the response from the air control tower was, what have you been drinking? Right? I think those days are rapidly coming to an end. And we're, like I said, I think we're moving into something brand new right now. And by virtue of even taking it seriously, I hate to say, you're now part of it.
Great point. Look, I can tell you firsthand, I've been to Congress, and I won't say who, but there are members of Congress who are now starting to have this conversation with me. I remember seeing one representative a while back, and he told me a story about how he and his son were fishing in a lake, and one of these things popped right out of the water, right in front of him and his son. So I think you're absolutely right, Bryce. I think people are feeling more encouraged now than ever to start having this conversation in a way without feeling judged or potentially marginalized.
Well, you guys are certainly opening my mind way up, and I don't want to hear about either one of you drunk on a lawnmower anytime soon. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
That's going to ruin all of my credibility for talking about this.
I will stay off any moving vehicle of that nature, I promise you.
Well, listen, this has been an absolutely intriguing conversation, and I think everybody has to take this seriously. Louis' book, Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, is something that I highly recommend you pick up and read. It's got some redactions in it, but that makes it all the more intriguing, in my opinion. And I want to know more, and I hope you guys will agree to come back and let's talk about this some more. And again, keep me posted on new things that you learn and hear about, but let's talk about this again, okay?
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Well, it's been very enlightening, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the intelligent conversation about a serious subject. So thank you very much, and I look forward to us chatting about this again.
An intelligent conversation about a serious subject. I was not anticipating Dr. Phil to enter the UFO chat. I'm still kind of stuck on that, but I really like it. And by the way, I feel the need to say that when I put that clip together, I focused mostly on the things that Dr. Phil said that I found were important, because no offense to anybody else, like I feel like the things that Lou and Bryce, the things that they said are things that they've been saying. And I've heard them say 1,000 times already. So Dr. Phil's the new person to the chat, so I wanted to highlight what he had to say. Yeah.
We highly recommend that you go back and find that interview and watch the full interview. It's a really great interview. And I really feel like this is going to push the needle, or it's going to broaden the awareness of disclosure and of this topic to so many more people, simply because Dr. Phil is talking about it.
Okay, so on that thought process, the clip that we just showed was just something that he aired on his podcast online.
Right.
But since that podcast aired, Point of Contact, aka Bryce Zabel, tweeted this. Just heard from Dr. Phil's producer that the show I recorded last month with Phil and Lou Elizondo will be released today as a podcast, and because they thought it turned out so well, it will be on the TV show Dr. Phil Primetime on June 2nd. I'll post the links when they send them to me. So there you have it. It did so well online. Now they're going to put it on his main show. So and I mean, how many followers does Dr. Phil have?
6 million?
So many. and I bet you like 90%, if not 99% of Dr. Phil's audience does not give a F about UFOs. So it'll be really cool to like plant UFO seeds in those people's brains, because you have to.
Right. I'm just happy that more people are taking this topic seriously.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I mean, that's what we need. We need people to take it seriously. We need people to demand transparency. We need for the secrecy to reduce, because I do think that there's a over classification issue. There's also an over secrecy issue.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And I was really happy to see Bryce and Lou go on Dr. Phil.
Same. And I also feel the need to give a shout out to Danielle Bergoli, aka Bad Baby, aka the Cash Me Outside. How about that girl? Because that clip that we saw of her was like when she was like 13. That was like 9 years ago. She's like 22 now, and she's come a long way. That girl is a millionaire. That girl is a millionaire.
Was that 9 years ago?
Yes, because she was 13 at the time. She's 22 now, so it was almost 10 years ago.
I thought it was longer.
It seems like longer, but yeah.
It does.
That girl lives in a $6.1 million home. She's got another home that's worth $4 million. She made like $52 million.
Made a rap career out of
she makes
her
music.
Dr. Phil appearance.
She's made music. She's made movies. And she's made millions.
I mean, if she's happy, good for her.
Hey, listen, got to make a bag somehow. And she did that. So good for her. All righty, guys. How impactful is it to see someone like Dr. Phil give serious attention to the UAP topic on his popular platform? Do you think this kind of mainstream visibility helps more people feel safe exploring these questions?
Absolutely.
And what stood out to you the most in how Dr. Phil approached the conversation with Lou Elizondo and Bryce Zabel? Sound off in the comment section below and let us know.
Next on the docket, new faces, new phase, UAP Disclosure Fund revamps its roster. The winds of change are blowing through the UFO transparency movement. One of the most high-profile organizations in the UAP disclosure space, the UAP Disclosure Fund, just hit refresh.
Boop.
Key figures are stepping down, others are stepping up, and some of the biggest names in the game are joining the advisory board. What does this shakeup mean for the future of UAP transparency and scientific inquiry? Let's break it down.
A tweet from UAP Disclosure Fund says, fresh off spearheading today's SCIF briefing for the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, we're excited to share more good news. Dr. Eric Davis, astrophysicist, former OSAP/ATIP researcher, and renowned expert in advanced propulsion, is joining the UAP Disclosure Fund Advisory Board. Eric Davis says, I'm honored to join the UAP Disclosure Fund at this pivotal moment. By sharing rigorous science with the steadfast advocacy, we can advance transparency on UAP and empower Congress, the executive branch, and the public to pursue the truth.
In reply to this announcement, Christopher Mellon says, very glad to hear the classified briefings went well. I was deeply disappointed I couldn't attend. Originally, the briefing had been scheduled for late April. I traveled to D.C. and was prepared to attend that day. However, at the very last minute, the committee, not us, canceled the portion of the meeting. I did then still attend the unclassified portion, but the classified component was only rescheduled within the last 48 hours. Unfortunately, I'm just now recovering from a non-trivial case of pneumonia and wasn't able to travel to DC on such short notice. But most importantly, it sounds like the briefing was elucidating, and that's what matters most.
To add to the mix, UAP James says, Rep. Burleson discusses being briefed on UFOs and aliens by Eric Davis and the future human hypothesis. Tim Albertino highlights the importance of congressional hearings and UAP whistleblowers. Tim Poole speculates the cover-up is to conceal that humans are in an experiment. Let's take a look at that embedded video now.
4 different alien species that he knows of?
Yeah, that was not what I expected him to say. But yeah, he said.
So who is this guy?
This is Eric Davis. Has been involved in the intelligence community since the 80s, right? So he's
for a long time.
For a long time, and he first worked for Bigelow Aerospace, and then he went on to get work for the Pentagon, and then CIA, and basically researching what they describe as crashed material. Retrieved crashed material.
And he was saying definitively they know of 4 alien species. Like, he's saying they're real.
Right. Now, whenever I pressed him and asked him, at least in that setting, he did not say that he personally has seen these, right? But he described the 4 different types of aliens, the Greys, the Nordics, the insectoids, and the reptilians that are commonly referred to in the UFO community. They would not just blend into the population.
No.
And that's at least, and I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying that's what I've been told.
What if they're just people from the future?
I think that's an interesting thought experiment, right? That what we're experiencing are future generations of humans who have mastered time travel. And if you mastered time travel today, wouldn't you want to go back and see what was going on in
well, you'd have
history? I would.
You'd have to.
I'd want to. I'd want to go back and see, hey, I want to see what the Pharaoh really looked like.
Okay,
I want to see what
confounds me, though, as someone who's not just a skeptic, but someone who just straight up doesn't believe in aliens. If that were true, would the powers that be in the intelligence agencies really just come right out and talk about it so openly?
They don't, though.
Well, we just heard that.
Well, this guy's former, isn't he?
Well, no, I mean,
you're never former intelligence.
Well, I mean, what's happened is we've had 2 hearings now, and we've had whistleblowers come forth, like David Grusch, and they have forced the conversation into the public arena. They forced the conversation. Then you have guys like Congressman Burleson and his colleagues who are fighting for disclosure. Without that battle, without that effort, you wouldn't be hearing about any of this. You wouldn't have these guys coming forward. You wouldn't have Eric Davis coming forward and making these declarations. I wouldn't necessarily call it a declaration. He was answering your question. But this is a new environment. We're in a new space now, post hearings, post UAP hearings. And so
I think
5 years ago I would have agreed with you, but that's just not the case anymore.
I think the reason they don't say it is because, just put it this way, how would you feel if you woke up and realized you were in a rat cage your whole life and everything you knew was just some stupid rat experiment for somebody, Like when we look at rats in a cage in a lab, we pity them. What if everything you've ever done in your life, everything you hoped for, your dreams, you woke up tomorrow and you knew was completely meaningless? The research you've done, the religion you held, everything was just totally nonsense.
So that you're living in a simulation.
Eric Davis has been hot on the scenes lately. That man is popping up all over the place.
Right.
He's just joining the advisory board for the UAPDF. He was recently at the Age of Disclosure premiere. Oh, which, by the way, I feel the need to say, I didn't want to make a whole story about this, but Dan Farah, they made an announcement. There's like an update to when Age of Disclosure is going to be coming out, and the update is they don't know when it's coming out. They were like, but we appreciate you guys still being interested, but like we still don't know. So anyways,
so to me that says that they are still trying to find the highest bidder.
Probably they're still playing the money game.
Right, to be able to release this on whatever platform.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And to keep this game of UAPDF musical chairs going, next, let's look at a tweet from the Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford, back from May 7th. This is an older tweet that says, "Hey, everyone. As announced today, I am stepping down from my role at the UAP Disclosure Fund. My mother's passing in early April deeply impacted me and made me reassess my priorities. It became clear that my work-life balance was unsustainable, and I knew something needed to change. As a result, I've decided to dedicate myself fully to ensuring the continued growth and success of the Good Trouble Show. Being part of the UAPDF since its inception has been incredibly rewarding, and I'm especially proud to have helped recruit talented individuals like Kirk McConnell and Jordan Flowers. With the recent organizational changes and the strong team that's in place, I have complete confidence that the UAPDF will remain the leading force advocating for UAP transparency in Washington, D.C. Matt Ford, hashtag The Good Trouble Show." Before we move on to read anything else, I feel the need to say, Matt Ford, if you watch our show, which I don't know if you do, but if you do, that's great. Hi. I'm sorry for the loss of your mom. I just wanted to send my condolences to you and your family and tell you that you're doing a great job on the Good Trouble Show. Keep it up.
Yep. And I know exactly how you feel because I lost my father last year. So, yeah, definitely our condolences.
Right.
All right. Additionally, Lou Elizondo tweeted this: "I want to say a huge thank you to the FBI for the relationship we built together while I was at UAPDF and for their courage to speak to Congress about their efforts regarding UAP. And also a big thank you to members of Congress who are continuing to pursue the truth on the UAP topic. And finally, as many of you know, I was in Oregon this last week at McMinnville UFO Festival. This appearance was planned since fall of last year. Due to this pre-scheduled event, I was unable to attend the SCIF meeting held last week and had never been able to attend that one due to the scheduling conflict. However, I am always happy to attend all necessary meetings in the future as long as they're organized enough in advance that my schedule will allow. As always, I am grateful for the members of Congress taking this topic seriously and continue to offer any service I can to assist them.
All right. So there you have it. One thing I can say about Lou is that that man has a busy AF schedule. And if he's got something on his schedule and somebody else tries to plan an event for him to be there somewhere else, he doesn't just ditch the first thing and go to the new thing. He honors the thing he's already got commitments to. And we witnessed that firsthand when we got to see him in Jacksonville, Florida, during that event. So I just want to give a shout out to Lou for, sticking to your guns. And I mean, like, he's a well-wanted dude. Like, everybody wants Lou to show up and talk about their thing. So it's like, he can only be so many places at one time. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So to sum it all up, the following UAPDF changes have been made. We have changing their position. Christopher Mellon is now the chairman of the board. Jordan Flowers is now executive director, and Lester Nare is now director of operations. Joining the team, we have Dr. Eric Davis, Dr. Anna Brady Estevez, and Dr. Abby Loeb as members of the advisory board. And parting ways saying deuces is Louis Elizondo, Dr. Gary Nolan, and Matt Ford. All right, so there you have it. I mean, like, I'm not mad about any of these changes. I mean, the only constant in life is change, so you got to expect it, right? If you fight change at every turn, you're going to be fighting all day long. But okay, cool. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, and with Christopher Mellon being the director of the board, I mean, that speaks volumes.
It does. It does. And I'm excited to see what they got coming out. They got a lot of plans to be super involved in the upcoming UAP hearings. They got a lot of plans to be involved with Danny Sheehan and the stuff that New Paradigm Institute has going on. So let's just keep our eyes to this topic and see what happens.
Yep. So, in your opinion, how important is it to bring a mix of academic, government, and operational expertise into organizations like the UAPDF? What kind of impact do you hope this refreshed team will have on public understanding and scientific engagement around UAPs? If you had the chance to share one idea or priority with the UAPDF's new leadership team, what would it be? Sound off in the comments and let us know.
And speaking of McMinnville UFO Festival, we present our last story of the evening, Weaponized, a week that moved the needle. This week in UFO news, the energy was electric. In Washington, D.C., while a much-anticipated public UAP hearing was unexpectedly postponed, major conversations still took place. Behind the scenes, key lawmakers received in-depth briefings from whistleblower David Grusch and other trusted voices. These private sessions are signs that serious attention is being paid and that real movement is happening where it matters most. Meanwhile, out west, the skies weren't the only thing lighting up. This iconic McMinnville UFO Festival turned the small town in Oregon into a celebration of cosmic curiosity, attracting thousands of visitors and sharing messages from researchers and experiencers alike. Online, things were just as lit. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp dropped a powerful new episode of Weaponized, addressing the buzz surrounding the whistleblower Matthew Brown and reflecting on this past week's UFO events. The episode covered a lot of ground, and we're here to break it all down. The latest episode of Weaponized wasn't just informative, it was interactive. Jeremy Corbell jumped into the live chat, bringing real-time energy, answers, and encouragement. We captured some of the best moments where he connected directly with the audience, addressing burning questions, adding fresh context, and sharing the vibe of a community that's more awake and engaged than ever before. Let's dive in.
Quite a UFO week. We actually had fun. Sometimes it's supposed to be fun, but it doesn't always work out that way. This week it did.
Man, I love that. So we went to the McMinnville UFO Fest. McMenamins puts it on. You've told me a little bit about McMenamins, but I mean, like, vintage hotels restored with beers, people dressing up, alien costumes. It was such a fun group of people. And look, dozens of thousands of people. That's what was crazy. Just on the street, walking around. I had a really good time, man.
Yeah, it's unlike any other UFO get-together that I've ever been to, and I've been to them all over the world for a long time. I think the only thing that's comparable is Phenomicon up there in Vernal, Skinwalker territory. This is the most fun UFO event ever. I say that every time we've been there, every time I've been there. I mean, you got, there was probably 16,000 people lining the parade route. They have a parade. They have all these marching bands and local businesses and putting on costumes and just having fun. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. They have vendors selling all kinds of really creative stuff. I mean, inside the hall itself where the speakers were, it's good information. It's solid speakers. But outside, it's all fun. It's not all that serious. There weren't any hard cases. Griping, complaining, taking notes, and trying to debunk this or that. It was there's just nothing quite like it. I think Lou spoke, Lou Elizondo, Danny Sheehan Brit elders. That was a great lineup. We got in there and gave our 2 cents. I don't know how we stack up with the other speakers, but we got some things off our chest, and it was fun.
Absolutely. There's a couple other things just in the ether. People are sending me like texts with screenshots. I hear all this chatter about, FBI being involved with the UFO thing, how there are certain groups that are looking in it and they showed some stuff to Congress. Look, I don't know all the feds involved with the UFO thing, but I think that's a good thing. If you have the FBI involved looking at this issue in a broad scope, I think that's good. So I don't know everybody. I know there's different factions of FBI that look at this stuff, but ultimately I think it's good. I think it's the way it's being reported. Like, is the FBI trying to get funding from the UAP caucus as was reported? I don't know, but I do know that DOJ would be great as allies if they're really trying to learn the truth about UAP, don't you think?
Totally agree. I hope they do get funding. I mean, a lot of FBI jobs have been eliminated in the new administration. And I'm sure a lot of these guys are wondering what's next for their law enforcement careers. The fact that the FBI is involved in investigating UFO, UAP related issues should be a surprise to no one. You'll recall I've talked about this in public. Years ago, before FOIA was the law of the land, you write to the FBI and say, hey, have you guys looked into UFOs? The answer is no. FOIA becomes the law of the land in the mid-'70s, and suddenly the FBI had to release hundreds and maybe even thousands of pages of stuff. They had been collecting things. Of course they should. There are national security implications to this matter. There are Russians and people from other nations who are actively gathering information. They're watching what goes on. They're looking for leaks. So the FBI should, that's part of its job. It should be involved.
Another thing that was put out into public that I just want to get your perspective on, I'll say something because I'm close to it, but there was promise to have new UFO hearings that were supposed to happen the week of the 12th, and they didn't happen. The public ones didn't happen. And I've got a little background on that. I can probably tell you why, but here's what people might not know. Maybe in UFO X and that people know, but there were 2 classified briefings. And I think that's coming out public enough where I could say something. So one of those classified briefings on UAP the week of the 12th was actually in a SCIF with David Grusch and also Representative Burleson. And Arrow was supposed to be informing Representative Burleson and others about the UAP topic. Then you got David Grusch sitting there looming over, making sure they don't say something that's not true. I mean, through little birdies, I heard some of possibly some of the things they tackled. All I got to say is we are so lucky to have someone like David Grusch sitting in a room like that so that Arrow can't obfuscate, lie, and pretend they're doing something they're not. There's probably conversations going on what types of analysis they were doing to debunk things. Man, I'd love to have a guy like David Grusch sitting right there behind, whose job it was at NRO to look at stuff like that, who has a deep knowledge, came forward as a whistleblower, and was able to kind of, I hope, in that room, was able to bring everybody to brass tacks. Word on the wash, birdies tell me that it was awesome to have David Grusch in that room because he kicked some ass for UFO transparency.
Yeah, it would be great to be in that room, be a fly on the wall, or see a transcript or a tape. I don't think we're ever going to see that, but we do have little bits and pieces of what it was like. And I guess, I think he gave a bitch slapping to a couple of people at a couple of issues, including ones that we are involved with.
The other one, I believe, if I had to guess, I would believe it would have been like Eric Davis, Mike Gold. I would believe that. I don't know for sure, but I would believe that they were in a classified briefing and that they were talking with a whole bunch of members and representatives. And that when they were doing that briefing, that they were able to kind of talk at a level which they couldn't in the public thing. So although we didn't have what everybody wanted that week of the 12th, which is like open congressional public hearings with firsthand whistleblowers, which I was fighting for, still fighting for, like for Matthew Brown as well. I think the American public should have him on the stand, maybe put his hand on a Bible or something and let him talk, right? It'd be great under oath to hear that. But I will say this, Representative Luna, Representative Burchett, Representative Burleson, and apparently Ogles, Representative Ogles as well, if they keep fighting, we support you. and we want to have more hearings. And because I've been talking with the people that are arranging all of that, they've been tapping you and me to try to get the best firsthand whistleblowers there. I do, fingers crossed, have hope that in the weeks to come, we're going to have more public hearings from firsthand people, either touch and craft or exposure on the inside directly to the cover-up.
So yeah, that festival looked like it was a lot of fun. To be honest with you, I'm kind of bummed out that I missed it.
Honestly, I never even heard about it till they said it had happened already, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe next year we'll have to try to go.
That would be awesome.
That would be fun.
Shout out to anybody whose name I featured from the Weaponized live chat. If you happen to see your name, do me a favor and write "Go UFO" in the comments, because I just want to see who's paying attention. I've been doing this, I think this is like a second week in a row now. I don't know. I'm just curious to see if people are noticing what I'm doing. I think it's cute. Anti-sways. So yeah, very, very cool. I don't think I've ever heard George Knapp say someone got bitch slapped before. That was another thing not on my 2025 bingo card. It's, things are happening.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, and another thing that happened, I say another thing like as if it's something else, but really for me, the biggest piece of that whole live chat experience was I got to ask Jeremy Corbell our famous question. And for those of you who don't know, on my channel, Hello Allie, we interview people and we always ask them before the interview is over, what is your greatest hope for the future of humanity? Yeah. And it's a question that we like to ask as many people as possible. As a matter of fact, we've also had Patrick from Vetted ask some of his guests that question. We've had Chris Lato from Lato Files ask that question, and we've had Pavel from Seco Activo podcast ask that question. So this question is definitely one that's been rolling around for a while. Anyways, I'm going way too hard on this. The point is that I got to ask Jeremy in the chat. So I said, what is your greatest hope for the future of humanity? Jeremy Corbell replies, my hope that we all come to the correct and actual consensus of reality. I reply, woohoo! Jeremy Corbell answered my favorite question. Thank you so much. Go UFO. So yep, kind of flex that piece a little bit. I'm excited. I did, I think that's cool.
Yeah. How would you answer that question? Let us know down in the comments section below. We'll read it.
I never even thought to ask that. That's a good question. Hey, if you want to answer our famous question too, go right ahead.
All right.
But what stood out to you the most in this week's Weaponized episode? Was it the conversation around Matthew Brown, the breakdown of events, or the call to keep moving forward? Have you ever been to a UFO festival like McMinnville? If so, which one and when? And lastly, Jeremy's live participation brought a lot of excitement to the chat. How important is that kind of connection between creators and the community to you? Make sure to go to the Lato Files Discord server and share your thoughts with the community there. An invite link can be found in the video description box below, along with all of the other sources of this show featured there in the order that they appear. So please make sure to check that out. And that concludes this week's UAP Society's weekly UAP UFO News Show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And while you're here, please do us a favor and smash that like button, click subscribe, ring our little notification bell, drop a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word.
All right.
Let's raise the collective consciousness together in unity.
All right. Much love.
Peace. And namaste. And don't forget about that special surprise that I mentioned earlier in the first story of the show. On the way out, enjoy this special treat of a video reel of the latest cropped circles that have popped up in England and other areas.
Okay.
All right. There you go. See you guys next week. Deuces.